A topic of conversation that really does seem to be dependent on if the person you like is in the White House or not does seem to be the greed of corporations, how greedy big companies are. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. And in a move that I cannot imagine in any way, shape, or form was somehow popular among the research teams involved in this. Sorry if you can't tell, I'm a little bit stuffy. But I want to talk about the incredible greed of corporations we already know are very greedy. The biggest names in anime is quietly supporting a legal push to cut off internet access for piracy. So I'm just going to jump ahead of it. It's not so much just a name in anime. It's one of the biggest media corporations that exist, and YouTubers have been dealing with their shit for years. We're going to be talking about UMG and Sony. And anybody who's ever made content on YouTube has at one point ran into issues with UMG. But Sony, that's a new one. That's interesting, but let's see what it has to say. Imagine losing your ISP not by court order, but because your ISP received a complaint that you might have streamed an anime episode illegally. Again, it's not just anime. The scenario is closer than it seems. A major legal fight could bring that into reality, especially for anime fans who've ever clicked on an unofficial stream or download. So, what's going on here is that those two corporations that I mentioned earlier are pushing for ISPs to force you to shut down, or force them to shut down your service if you've ever torrented anything. The reason this site is focusing on anime so much is because it's from an anime news website, but that goes for anything, any of the things, whatever it is, movies, TV shows, music, whatever. Why do you think UMG is involved? If you torrent anything, they want to be able to go to your ISP and shut it down. The battle centers on a lawsuit from music giants like UMG and Capitol Records. Their target? Grande Communications, a Texas-based provider. The issue? Whether ISPs should be forced to disconnect users if they receive repeated piracy claims. I don't know who's making the claims. Might sound like a music industry concern, but the consequences could hit anime, all media fans directly. I could be wrong on this, but by and large, it seems like music piracy is more or less a thing of the past since the growth of things like Spotify and YouTube Music and all that stuff. It doesn't really seem like music piracy is as much of an issue as it was back in like the Napster days or the LimeWire days. But I could definitely see how this could create a precedent for things like Sony and HBO and all these other major media conglomerates to say, oh, hey, you downloaded Game of Thrones a year and a half ago. Guess what? We're shutting off your internet because you owe us all the money for this shitty TV show. The last season was shitty. It was okay. But again, if you stream something illegally or if you download something illegally, if you torrent or pirate anything like that, they want to come directly to you and personally shut off your internet connection because their money. And this is exactly why I said what I said at the beginning of the video about how greedy corporations is only really a topic of discussion when someone you don't like is in the White House. I think this is a prime example of corporations invading the life of average everyday people who downloaded a TV show or a movie. What does it matter? I thought if you're poor, you can get away with anything. Grande's defense, they're a neutral provider. They argue that they only deliver internet service, but shouldn't be held accountable for what individual users do. Let's put this into different context. Would you sue Ford for somebody drunk driving? Do you sue Wild Turkey or Buffalo Trace for somebody drunk driving? Can you sue people who just provide a service and somebody does something wrong with it? That could be extrapolated out to any extreme you can imagine. Are you going to start suing Hostess for making people fat or giving them diabetes? Are you going to start suing milk companies because you have the shits because you're lactose intolerant. Lactose intolerance. Their case whether ISPs should be forced to investigate and act on privacy ports is raising alarm bells for anybody who watches content online, because it sets a very scary precedent. How far back does it date? How long and how many complaints? Are they supposed to pull somebody's internet just because they get one complaint? Like, what are the finer details of it? This is just greedy corporations. If you make something, somebody can steal it. Are you going to see Samsung suing Walmart because, a phone got stolen and then somebody got like, what are you trying to set? Or is this just the cost of doing business? Why this impacts anime any media viewers. Music and anime are deeply connected. Anime is full of copyrighted soundtracks, opening themes, background scores, and some companies involved in this debate have strong links to anime itself, like that, again, for any media. Sony, for example, owns Aniplex, a key anime production studio, and Crunchyroll, one of the largest streaming services. While Sony is not a part of this particular lawsuit, they have publicly supported harsher piracy policies, including suspending internet access. And this is why I mentioned Sony in the beginning of this, because they're a name being tossed around in this. It's interesting, to say the least, to see what these people are trying to pull. It's not like Sony is hurting for money that, that song that you downloaded or that episode of One Piece, they're not going to go under, but it is their property. I feel like pulling the rug out from people is incredibly insane. They probably wouldn't be hurting so bad if they didn't make such shitty movies. If this case changes in the law, anime fans may be next in line, including those who stream unlicensed episode, read scanned manga, or use file-sharing platforms. So they're just going for anything. Anything at all. They're just throwing shit against the wall and seeing what sticks. But this could also open up a door for them to invade your privacy and watch what you're doing, or I guess scan, maybe, the information incoming and outgoing. What Grande is saying. Grande is taking the fight to the U.S. Supreme Court. They're asking whether ISPs should be punished for not simply cutting off users after receiving a notice. That's what I want to know. Their argument covers several major points. Verifying copyright claims isn't easy. Shared connections, people who are in houses or dorms, complicate identifying who's committing infringement. Terminating access could seriously disrupt lives, not to mention contracts, affecting work, education, and healthcare. Again, this doesn't even begin to look at all the variables that exist for something like this. What if somebody is using your Wi-Fi? What if someone in the household is doing it without the knowledge of other people in the household? There's a million questions to ask with this, but these corporations, of course, are not interested in that. They're just going, my money? Nah, turn their internet off. That's my money. They're like shitty J.G. Wentworth commercials. It's my money and they stole it now. I don't think they realize how bad this makes them look, or they just don't care. They either realize it or just don't care. And that's not to mention how lazy and selfish it is for them to just kind of go, meh, it's actually up to the ISPs, not us, to deal with this. Grenade says copyright holders should pursue infringement directly, not shift the blame to ISPs. Hey, who just said that? They also argue that lawsuits targeting users already exist and should be the first option, not cutting off someone's internet, or not cutting off someone's basic utility. Gotta agree. The article then goes on to explain how the court had ruled against Grenade for them not following DMCA protection, which, okay, that makes sense. That is a current law that exists that they did not abide by. But they are taking this further by saying that they shouldn't have to cut off the internet access. So honestly, I still agree with Grenade on this one. I just said Grenade a whole bunch. Grande. Could this affect your connection? Yes. Yes, it could. If the court If the court sides with labels, it might lead to major changes in how internet access works. ISPs could start cutting off users based on unproven complaints. That includes people watching unlicensed anime episodes or reading manga, like we just talked about. Honestly, I feel like it could go a lot further than just that. Again, like I said, this makes a very a dangerous precedent that is probably... It's not a great precedent to set. This could be huge because, okay, let's say, yes, you can cut it off for privacy. Okay, what about other legal issues? What about hate speech? Where is the line to be drawn on this, and why do we decide to let internet providers draw that line? Could this boil down to an ISP going, well, I received a complaint about this person saying stuff online that I don't agree with, so no, I'm just going to cut it off? There is also a larger concern. What happens to your rights if you're wrongly accused? I didn't even think about that. How can you challenge a claim before losing access? Right now, those questions don't have clear answers. This case could mark the beginning of stricter enforcement, not just for music, but for all digital media. We're waiting to see what the U.S. Supreme Court will hear the decision that could reshape copyright enforcement in years to come. Whether they take it or not, the outcome could affect millions of people and possibly encourage other entertainment companies to follow suit. Now, I don't know what the outcome is going to be if the Supreme Court even hears it. I hope they do, because this feels like a major rights violation. But let me know what you think down below in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me, and I will see you all in the next one. Later.